What's up, homies? What's up, homies? What's up, homies? Welcome to the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. We pick the brains of industry pros to unlock the trade secrets of homeownership. Our mission is simple: to turn everyday people into knowledgeable homeowners. All right. What's up, homies? I'm Sturdy Joe, and this is the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. Today, I'm very lucky to have on with me John Snider, attorney at law, real estate attorney. Snider Law?
Snider Law, PLLC, yep.
All right, what's up, man? Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much
not
for
your
having
typical,
me.
Not your typical day-to-day. This ain't what we do closings in normally,
We
right?
should.
Yeah, we should, right?
I love it here.
Yeah.
No, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely,
and,
dude.
Obviously, it was great to hear from you, get a call and to come in, and
Yeah.
I love what you're doing,
Yeah.
so this is cool. I'm excited.
Always, I see your content out there, and, through the years working together, networking together, always love what you do, and I always respected what you had to say, and I feel like real estate attorney, very, very, very important job. When people ask me that, like, interested in the home buying process, they're like, what should I do? I'm like, listen, if you do nothing else, hire a very, very good home inspector, obviously.
Yep.
And get a good attorney. Get a good attorney, because a lot of clients will go in and they'll be seller represented. They'll get the listing agent will just represent them. I'm like, just make sure you have a rock solid attorney on your side, because things get weird. But before we get into that, I want you to just take a second, do your intro, tell me what Snider Law is, what you guys do, how we got into real estate law. It's your time, man.
Yeah, so Snider Law, PLLC, it's a firm I created back in 2021. We do predominantly real estate and business transactions and litigation. We do handle some, off that matters, such as trust and estates and estate planning transactions, just the transactions, but predominantly real estate and business transactions and litigation.
Okay, cool.
From that, before we started, or before I went on my own, I worked for several other firms, just grinding it in, day out, and just
in the real estate space, or different attorneys?
Real estate transactions.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of banking transactions and closings, obviously, and then after that, I was I saw how to create the model, and I just was like, I'm going to go do it myself.
Nice.
Hang my shingle, and it's been good ever since.
Long Island real estate is a bull, so it's definitely not a bad thing to get.
I was in the city too when it started, and it was just a totally different animal. So to come out here, it's definitely an animal, but there's definitely a lot of differences, I'm sure we'll talk about.
Did you work in the industry first and then get your law degree, or did you go to law school right out of high school kind of thing? Like, is that?
Yeah, so actually I was in corporate finance, and I did some management consulting roles before I became an attorney.
Oh, cool.
I did night school in Boston.
Nice.
And then I got
Is that where
married
you're from?
Here. From the Boston area, so New Hampshire.
Oh, cool.
But I have family in and around Boston. I spent several years in Boston.
Yeah.
Then I came to
obviously you don't have the "Ayo, how you doing?" accents like a Long
wicked.
Islander.
I say wicked.
Yeah, so I could kind of tell you weren't like from East Meadow or something like you are kind of now.
Yeah.
But you've transplanted well. You're
a little bit.
You're a Long
like
Islander.
It's
Yeah.
good. My wife's from here. She says coffee and all that stuff.
Heck yeah,
but,
love my coffee, man.
Yeah, there we go. We got some right now.
Yeah, you brought the coffee, and it's black too. That's the way to go. So, all right, I like that. The lawyer thing is so interesting to me, because I think growing up, you're like, I'm a lawyer, but then when you become an adult, you see there's so many different kinds of law to practice. Mm-hmm. It's always interesting to me, like, how did we land on real estate attorney? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, just a passion. I've always had a passion for real estate. The lawyer in me came about at a younger age, just because to me, when I was thinking about being a lawyer, I wasn't going to go to be like a prosecutor or like defense attorney. But I just knew that the skill set a lawyer had was applicable to anything you really did. So be it a business setting, or in this instance, real estate law and business transactions, I just found that the skills that a lawyer had were very useful. Yeah. Be a business owner, say I owned a coffee shop, I could know, certain, I'd have a certain skill set going into that.
Yeah, you can never, it's never going to not benefit you having that.
So that was the path,
set,
but then after that, it was just taking off in the interest that I liked, which is real estate and business.
Yeah, so like I said, the attorney thing, I think growing up you said like DA, kind of prosecutor. Like, I feel like that's what people assume it is. But I actually, in construction, I met an attorney who defended contractors and the like. Mm-hmm. And he came up as a landscaper, and he owned a landscaping business, and he dealt with it as a business owner, dealing with lawsuits and whatnot. And he was an educated dude and did the same thing, night classes, got into it, and he was representing contractors, and that was his niche. He was that's what he did day in and day out.
Yep.
Well,
I mean, right, I know your background's construction too, right? And you're bringing that aspect to your job now, and it's just the skill set you bring in is just vast in that you can look behind. I use this example when we're talking about like working with you or in the home inspection period. You see past the drywall and the sheetrock, right? Sheetrock drywall. You see, in the paint, you see through like the studs and making sure that the electrical and the plumbing, heating, and mechanical systems, and you see the useful life, or you can provide that nexus for if the roof goes, this is what could happen.
Yeah.
And that's such a valuable skill set to have from your construction to bring it over into your business.
Yeah, it is amazing. Like being in construction, I met guys who lived. I say this term. They lived a lot of different lives, and now at this point, I've kind of met that a little bit. I've done a lot of different things. I've been involved in a lot of different projects, and each one of them we pick up a different skill and bring it into what we're doing today. And even if in 10 years from now I'm doing something different, there's stuff that I'm learning day to day here that I can apply moving forward. But real estate attorney, you deal with real estate transactions, and you said like estate. Similar, like something with estate transactions too?
Yeah, so we pretty much touch everything real estate. So real estate transactions and litigation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that just stop at transactions. We also handle the litigation too.
Okay.
So yeah, that can be, and I think what makes a really...
Estates handle a lot of real estate. Like if somebody passes away, and most of the time what they own is a property.
Yeah.
That's an interesting, from my perspective, going and doing inspections on estate sales and whatnot, that's got to be an entire pretty sticky process to go through, handling the estate stuff and
definitely can be
dealing with the kids.
Yep.
I'll ask my client, like, people are buying a house, they just think they're buying a house, and we could see that they got a moving truck, grandma's not there anymore.
Right.
And I'll ask them, be like, how many, do you know how many kids are involved in this deal? And they're like, oh, there's 4, and one lives in California. I was like, ooh, this is going to take a long time. I hope you're not in a rush to move in.
Yeah, in an estate example, definitely, because there's, oftentimes there's emotion, right, with the house. I grew up in the house, or we had an instance where we closed the deal probably a year ago, and the son was calling the shots in a way, but he was down in Maryland, and my guys who were investors were trying to buy the house, but then there was this post-possession period. He's like, I need to come and grab this stuff because it's sentimental.
Yeah.
The house was a total wreck, but it's just that sentimental value to him that he needed to be there one last time.
Yeah.
For sure. In terms of distribution of proceeds, that can be a totally different issue. The estate planning itself, the estate work and clearing title exceptions, like a death certificate, or if it went through administrative division of probate court, you're getting obviously letters.
Yeah.
There's an administrator can come in and obviously sell or convey the property, be it in a trust or whatever it may be. Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts.
The estate thing's always intrigued me. Like I said, working alongside of it, and what I think it happens is death is a surprise in a lot of situations, and it's sprung on people. So this is the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. We're trying to help out homeowners any way they can. Like, nobody's planning to have to sell maybe their parents' house and have to deal with situations with their siblings. But I feel like, when I'm inspecting a house that's for sale, like, it's a surprise thing. It's sprung on them. From your perspective as a real estate attorney navigating these transactions, what is something that maybe, I don't know if there's tips that somebody could do, like, if their parents are older and they know they're going to have to sell mom's house when she goes, is there something that the client could do maybe when mom's still alive to make the process a little easier, or things that you see along the way that mess up that process entirely that maybe could have been avoided? Anything like that?
Yeah, so it just depends on the facts, right? It's such a lawyerly answer, but it depends. Always having good records, right? Having the last deed of record, anything with permitting or COs, right? Or anything with the property itself, is always good. For people who are getting older, obviously talk to your trust and estates attorney, but having things like a durable power of attorney in place. So in the event mom becomes incapacitated, daughter can come in and act on her behalf.
Yeah.
If it depends on the property and if there's a note on the property, but it's allowed under the St. Germain Act, Germain Act, where essentially, even if there's a note, you can still transfer it to a lifetime trust, a lifetime revocable trust. Because obviously the theory, creditors can still come after the property. If you transfer to an irrevocable trust, that could be a technical default, and they could do the accelerate on the note. The mortgagee can accelerate.
Yeah, so that's getting into trust stuff. So that's looking into trusts and to help.
Yeah, if you're trying to avoid some of the pitfalls, you could consider, and talking with your trust and estates attorney, but creating a lifetime revocable trust and then transferring said property into said trust in the event obviously it becomes irrevocable at the time of death. durable power of attorney, things of that nature. Maybe even there's other ways where you can transfer the property to, say, daughter, and then she's a remainderman, and you became a life tenant. So obviously you're using occupancy.
So once the older person passes away,
Yep.
it's already owned by somebody else, so it's not really.
Yeah. And then the daughter can come in at that point, or if she became incapacitated, there's a durable power of attorney.
It's a tough. That whole entire process is a difficult one because you're dealing with a personal issue, and you have to make business decisions, and I think that's really hard. And I actually had an experience with one of my real estate agents. It was her mom's house, and she was like, "Listen, I need you to come in and do an inspection because we're gonna sell the house. Me and my brothers want to get ahead of it." She's like, "My mom's she's old, but she hasn't passed away yet. But it's too much house for her. She's not taking care of it. She's starting to hoard, which is a huge one. I mean, we go into these houses that they're just full of junk. They're rotting. There's mice in it because they can't take care of it anymore. And maybe they go in and check in on mom and dad, but they're not in the world. They're not doing an inspection on mom's house.
Right.
So this person was actually, she was moving mom out. They were able to move her into family's house. But one of the reasons was she was like, I don't want to deal with going through this process after she passes away. We'd rather sell it, let her live off the money the rest of the life. She can live with family, and she was pretty old. And I mean, the mom, the grandma was yelling at my realtor like the whole time, like, right. I'm not moving out. But it sucks. But I mean, on the other end of it, you see houses go kind of go to crap, when they get stuck in the estate and family can't decide. And for buyers, like I said, I give them a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, listen, try to find out if this deal is going to go smooth, because it can get really weird.
And depending on the facts, like oftentimes when you have an administrator, so there's really two sets of court, right? In the surrogate's court, you have probate, which would be someone had a will, and obviously they left the house to so-and-so, right? And so obviously it would be probated, they'd be appointed an executor, they could come in, act on behalf of the estate, sell the property. The other way is there is no will, so you follow the intestate, so past intestate, so you follow the laws of testamentary, right? Or sorry, the intestate laws in New York, and it would essentially go through the administrative division, and an administrator would get appointed, and then they can act on behalf of the property, right?
Okay.
Depending on that situation, in both situations really, but definitely an administrator position, they're not going to make any reps to the property.
Yeah.
So like what you're saying is so true. If the property did go to crap, an administrator is not going to make reps to things generally not being in working order, right? Plumbing, heating, electrical, as is throughout the entire process, right? They're not going to probably not close out open permits or violations. Definitely something to know because of the type of deal it is. Right?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, man, and I see it firsthand, and it's tough because it's a personal thing, but I would hate. Maybe not. Maybe it'd be a funny joke to leave my kids behind this pile of crap that they got to deal with. But so maybe it's funny for the old people to screw everybody else over. But I couldn't imagine
one last goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. One last goodbye. Yeah, exactly. Clean up all my stuff I never cleaned up. Yeah. So who knows? But all right, let's roll it back to the other side of real estate. The positive, first-time home buyer, ready to start a family. They want to buy a house. Everybody knows a real estate agent sells them a house, right? But even myself, I'm a fringe guy in real estate doing home inspections. I am in communication with attorneys all the time, and I still don't know 1,000,000% what the real estate attorney's entire responsibilities are, and what can a homeowner expect from when they retain a real estate attorney.
Yeah, so a real estate transactional attorney, their role is to essentially guide the buyers, whoever that buyer is, first-time home buyer, investor, whoever it may be, through the transaction, navigate them through the transaction, bring them to a successful closing, protect their contract deposit that will get put on contract, and try to avoid any pitfalls throughout the process, right? And just to obviously defend and make sure that they're protected through that transaction. A good real estate attorney, transactional attorney, has seen it all, right? They've seen what we were just talking about. We were talking about very substantive trust and estate stuff and administrative division and probate division, but they've seen landlord-tenant stuff. They've seen working with investors, first-time home buyers. They know, the banking and settlement side, if there's financing involved, in the mortgage commitment period, in the mortgage, the type of mortgage that they're going to be applying for, and the process through that, FHA conventional, whatever it may be. If there's seasoning issues, we have that on another deal right now. A good real estate attorney has seen those issues, and they're advising the client accordingly and how the transaction is going to occur. So that's really the role of the attorney, obviously protecting the deposit. That's one of the biggest parts. But bringing them to a successful closing. And really, when you engage with an attorney, it's it's kind of at the point where you start by looking at properties, right? That's really it. Then either you're searching yourself or you find an agent, you're working with that agent broker to find a property, all right? Once you submit an offer, there's going to be an offer acceptance and consideration. We're going to talk about that. The offer is submitted, say it gets accepted, now they're calling you.
Mm-hmm.
You come in, and as I mentioned before, like with your experience, you're giving them everything.
Looking at everything.
Yeah, top to bottom, bottom to top. This is what the property is. This is what's looking like, these useful lives. Plumbing, heating, electrical, mechanical.
I say this is what the house has to offer.
Right.
This is what it is.
And you're giving them that full scope so they really know full and well what's going on. And sometimes, and oftentimes it will scare them because they come in and like, oh, there's several other things going on. That's where I would be stepping in after the inspection takes place in and around that time to, once we get a contract, to walk them through the contract, the roles and responsibilities of the contract, because that's really what we're looking at, is that contract's roles and responsibilities between the purchaser and the seller throughout the deal. So they come to my office, we're working through top to bottom, and I'm just explaining everything. We're talking about the process, we're talking about the inspection report, we're talking about, once we get under contract, ordering title, clearing the title exceptions, them working with their lender, furnishing all the information they need.
Now with contract, and especially because this is the part that I get involved with, are contracts pretty standard, or are there variations that can go from house to house and conditions? What is a condition with a contract?
So in real estate law, and this is really everywhere, right? So there's I won't get too technical with that, but there's a standard form. So you have a standard form which most practitioners will use. You're not required to use it.
Okay.
I know attorneys who don't. They have their own form, but it's generally going to be followed by a standard form. That form is anywhere from 1 to 10 pages. And then you have a rider, and a rider amends or modifies the standard form, and that's more firm specific. So every attorney, it looks very similar, but every attorney might have
little wording difference. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
That actually have real implications with regard to the deal.
Yeah.
So that's the standard form, the rider, and then substantively we're working through that contract, making changes that again protect our client, be it the seller or the purchaser.
And now a word from our sponsor, the Ryan Anthony Head Start Fund. This foundation is focused on providing alternative career paths for young people other than just college. If you want to learn more about what they got going on and some updates, you can check them out at lookwhomadeit.org. Now back to the show.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I feel like this part of real estate has changed so much because it's such a heavy seller's market and everybody's buying everything as is. But I got in 2017. It was a very different market where I would go to a home inspection. I would just do a typical home inspection, and they would be renegotiating things. They'd be putting things in contract, getting money, doing repairs. I do feel like that's something that our market is really missing, where the buyer just has to kind of take it on the chin, because if you say anything, they're just going to go with their 6 backup offers, which is crazy to me.
Right.
But one day it will come back around. Things always swing back around. So that, when I say conditions, right, that's where that falls in. If I put an offer in for $300,000 and my home inspector tells me I need a new roof, and the seller is in a position to say, okay, is that where that would go in, and we'd put a condition in the contract saying that you're going to replace the roof, or you're going to credit me, or
for sure,
yeah, right, something along those lines.
Yep, for sure. And I'd actually be reaching out to you, and I would ask about it. So if they brought it up and said, hey, we want this a part of the contract, and say the agents, I haven't really confirmed it yet, because the agents and brokers, they do such a great job with negotiating some of those hard terms. Because oftentimes when you leave with the attorneys, we're just butting heads and then nothing gets resolved. The brokers have the party's ears, so they can get that through. But when it comes up, I'll call you up and I'll say, hey, Joe, what's going on with this? Can you tell me a little bit about what happened at the inspection?
Yeah.
And so I get a better understanding too, so that I can word it properly, so that we obviously know what we're entering into and we're agreeing to, both parties are agreeing to.
So on my end, I'm really glad that I started in that buyer's market, because I don't think I've had a phone call with a lawyer in a long time, but when I started, that was a conversation that would happen all the time, because the lawyer would call me and be like, hey, Joe, I read over the report, looks great. The client wants to ask for these 3 defects, and then we would go over wording. And I take a little bit of pride in writing my defects, because the wording matters so much. And I was taught that by real estate attorneys, because the way I word it could really, really make or break that condition for my client, where I've had people call me up, realtors tell me about other situations where it's like, they said they were going to fix this. They said, we're going to fix this problem. And we go to the final walkthrough and they painted over it.
Right.
Okay, what was the condition?
Right.
I don't know. They said they were going to fix it. That's really vague.
Right.
That's really, really vague.
Right.
And it's kind of, listen, as a home inspector, we're the king of speaking vaguely.
Yep.
But the recommendation is always at the end, if the electrical panel looks like it's on fire, I'm going to say, electrical panel looks like it's on fire, that's a safety hazard, probably needs to be replaced. Mm-hmm. I recommend contacting a licensed electrician for a further invasive inspection.
Right.
And when the attorney sees that, we have a major problem, like, again, something that's going to burn the house down. The seller's gonna have to show that a licensed electrician looked at it. We need some kind of receipt. Like there's steps that go into that process when you word it a certain way.
Right.
I do feel like with our market being so heavy seller that we've kind of gotten away from that. Another story too, this one just happened recently. I had one of my real estate agents was listing the house. Another agent and their buyer was buying the house. They found pipe insulation, asbestos pipe wrap insulation, or what it looks like asbestos pipe wrap insulation. This listing agent was she's a talker, she's Italian Long Island mom, like yada, yada, yada kind of, says, oh, no problem, we'll take care of it. That was pre-contract. Mm-hmm. They go into contract, no condition on taking care of the asbestos, nothing. Mm-hmm. They're going through like to close, and they're like, the buyer's asking, did you ever take care of that asbestos? And they're like, what are you talking about? Because the lady forgot she even said it.
Right.
And so she called me about what to do and how to remediate and all that stuff. And I was like, let me ask you a really important question. Like, is it in contract? She's like, no, it's not.
Yep.
So I was like, she didn't want to be a bad person. She was paying out of pocket to take care of it because she told them without ever getting like authorization from the seller that we're going to take care of the asbestos, but never made it into contract. So there was asbestos in the house that the buyer wanted cleaned up.
Right.
Never made it into the contract.
Right.
That's crazy, right? Am I crazy to think that's crazy?
No, it's not crazy, and there's always going to be, but generally there's going to be a merger clause under that standard form, Section 28 generally, that just says if it's not in the contract, it's not agreed to, right? So any oral representation, this happens all the time. People are like, oh yeah, we'll do X, Y, and Z, and then it doesn't make it into the contract, guess what? They're not going to be responsible.
And that's why my advice is to have a good attorney, because again, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that was a conversation. Like I wasn't having the home inspection recap with the agent and the buyer. I was having that recap with the attorney and the buyer. And maybe the agent was listening in just so they could hear what was going on. But communication between a buyer and their attorney is paramount, especially at that point of the process. Right?
For sure. And that's what, I mean, as an attorney, I make myself available 7 days a week. This is what I do. And I've promoted this, I've even put it on my own social media that I give people my cell phone. I do.
Yeah.
Because I want them to know that I'm acting on their best behalf, protecting their interest, and bring them to a successful closing. They can contact me anytime.
Yeah, we're in the service industry.
Right, that's what it is. Yeah. So, definitely paramount for sure.
Yeah, so definitely. So that's a super important part of the process is getting into contract.
Yep.
Now, another thing I've noticed too is closings. Closings get crazy, and that's another part where that contract comes back into play and the attorney comes back into play. So is there, any advice when, I got a closing in a couple days, I'm buying my first house, I don't know what to even expect. What are some tips or advice for somebody going into a closing?
So a good attorney, you'll know you have a good attorney when you get to the closing and you wrap things up in like 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because outside of like day of and like walkthrough issues, the closing's really not a point of contention and to fight. The point of the closing is to solidify the transfer from one property to the other, pay the remaining balance of the proceeds, tender over the money, and call it a day. So if you're getting into fights more often than not, you're seeing the attorneys that you're working with getting into fights more often than not at the closing table, and it takes 2, 3, 4 hours. Look around. I mean, that's just what it is, right? Because, the closing isn't that, right?
Yeah.
That point.
The final walkthrough things can get weird because that's the buyer. Final walkthrough is the buyer's last chance to look at the house before you go into closing. Make sure that whatever it's supposed to be, it is.
Yep.
And also too, so if I don't know if this is a standard thing. I know we buy houses as is, but like when I do a home inspection, let's say this garage is here and I'm buying this house and I don't put in the conditions that I want this gigantic detached structure to still be here. But if I go to my final walkthrough and this is funny because it's exaggerated, but if this detached garage was gone, right, and there's nothing like what happens then at the closing? Is there ways for them to get money? Is it just, this was an extreme example, but what are the expectations versus, when I put the offer on the house and I went into contract, the house looked like this, and now at the final walkthrough, it's different. Are buyers protected at all with that, or?
It sounds like I'm going to just be saying it depends all day, but it really depends.
It's job to job to job. Every job is different.
Yeah, and it depends on where when you got up to that point. I mean, for example,
is there a standard all right? So I know the air fryer on the counter doesn't have to stay, but if I put the offer in and they didn't say anything, maybe it's in the listing that, there's kitchen appliances, and then I go in and find a walkthrough and there's no refrigerator.
Yep.
Is there a standard that they're supposed to leave the refrigerator, or am I just trusting that they do it?
There's an exclusion section on the first page generally.
That would have to be excluded.
They would have to have excluded
Yeah, so if they didn't exclude it, then I have to expect that my refrigerator is still going to be there.
But be careful too, because different areas there's different customs, right? So like Staten Island, for example, strangely enough, if you do a deal there, the listing, whatever the listing actually indicates, they go off of what the listing shows, so not necessarily the contract. So we've had instances where the washing machine shows up, if it's there and it presently exists, it'll be an as is, normal wear and tear, blah, blah, blah. And then we get to the closing, it's gone.
The listing, even out on Staten Island, the listing has to hold some weight, right? Can you just put anything on a listing? Because I'm the guy who goes in and looks at the house, and I look at the listing before. And I mean, you're trusting a listing agent who knows nothing about a house to write it up, but a lot of the times the listings are wrong.
It depends on what part of the listing is wrong. But again, it goes back to that merger clause, which is what we're following in the contract, which says if it's not in the contract, it's not in the contract.
Okay.
So the listing does have weight. It's a good indication, but obviously every buyer of real property, residential, commercial, needs to do their due diligence. And they have a due diligence period.
All right. So if we
confirm things.
if we get past the inspection, we go into contract, and what I thought was on the listing wasn't, but I didn't catch it during the inspection and my due diligence phase, then we go into contract, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, again, depending on what exactly that is. Yeah.
I think this is a perfect chance to pivot to the seller disclosure.
Sure.
And I think it's for all our people watching that currently own homes. Average person lives in a house for 7 years? They might sell their house soon. What is the seller disclosure form? What was it before versus what it is now? Should I be scared? What is it?
So the property disclosures are not new.
Okay.
They've been around, and in most areas outside of, really the city, Nassau, Suffolk County, we would always do the $500, which is part of the old provision saying in lieu of giving said disclosures, you'd issue a $500 credit.
Yep.
Right, without giving the disclosures. Outside of that, so we've done deals in Buffalo, Niagara, all the way up, wherever it may be, they give the disclosures. So there is no $500 credit, and that's the way it's generally always been. Now it's just everyone has to do it, right? So as of March
so the
20th
disclosure isn't new. It's taking that $500, sidestep away.
Yep.
Because I remember when I bought this house.
Yep.
The guy gave me $500 because he didn't know what was wrong with it, but it was fine because I knew what was wrong with it, so it was fine.
Yep.
But okay, so the disclosure form's always been there.
The disclosure forms
The
have been there.
$500 got taken away, so we have to fill
part
out.
of the amended, part of the amendment to the rule was that the $500 in lieu of disclosures got removed.
So what is the actual disclosure form? What do they have to disclose?
So I don't know the exact number. 50 some odd questions, 3, 4, 5, 6 page.
Oh, there's
form.
actual questions. It's not just a blank notes pad where you got to fill out everything you hate about the house.
And the disclosures there, really the way the rule came about as of March 20th this year, where now everyone has to give these disclosures, is they don't want sellers, because this is New York City, Nassau, Suffolk County, the whole New York State, right? Millions and millions of transactions are done, right? On whatever it is, yearly, whatever, multiple year basis.
A lot of
right?
real estate.
A lot of real estate.
Yeah.
And in doing that, they don't want sellers of real property to conceal information. So really what this does is it says sellers have to give a disclosure, 50 some odd questions. They have to answer it, and it's either yes, no, unknown, or not applicable. And they have to give information about the property. Now, where the potential liability comes in from a seller's standpoint, for all the sellers out there, is if they had actual knowledge of a particular defect, right? And they didn't disclose it, and that actually caused damages after the fact.
Oh, okay.
The buyers
damages
could have
after the fact.
a point of remedy to come after the sellers.
Okay, how do I prove that? How do I prove, if I'm a buyer and I think you knew and you lied on the disclosure, how do I prove that? How do I know you know?
So it depends so much.
It's law, it's law. This is why we have a court system, and I would have to sue the seller then, right? That goes into a lawsuit. I'd be suing the seller, and now we'd be hiring lawyers and lawyering up.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, because it's not just a standard thing at that point.
You'd come to me, we'd go through the facts, and then ultimately, if it carried weight, we would file a summons complaint wherever venue and jurisdiction is, and we'd go after them.
Yeah.
An example would be, and this is actually a case law back, 10 plus years from now, or 10 years ago, essentially was that one of the cases was the guy concealed that there was flooding. He didn't disclose that there's flooding on the property. And he gave the disclosures, said that there wasn't any flooding. A year later, there's a ton of flooding on the property, and that area has been known to have flooding in the property.
Okay.
He gave affidavits saying, I didn't know that there was flooding. The person who was bringing the lawsuit got affidavits from the neighbors saying that there's definitely flooding in the area. There's been flooding. They've noticed flooding on the property. So that's kind of creating
we got to get some evidence. Yeah, we got to get some evidence, and we got to make a lawsuit out of it.
Right. So that's kind of creating, you're kind of, you're bringing kind of circumstantial stuff here, right? You're trying to show that's how you knew, or you could have known.
Yeah, how could you not know?
Right.
Because my question is it because it created such a big shockwave because this and there was the other law about broker fees or whatever, that I feel like that was all going on at the same time. So there was like mass hysteria in real estate and people freaking out. And obviously being an inspector, like people's first answer was, I'm telling my sellers before they do the disclosure to hire you to do a pre-listing inspection so that they can at least answer the questions based off your pre-listing inspection. And I was like, I almost think that's worse because if something else came up, and you actually went out of your way to hire a home inspector, and a home inspector is a human being. They have a 2-hour window to try and find as much info about the house as possible. There's a chance they're going to miss something. I feel like if I go into a lawsuit and the judge is looking at it, and it's like, you fill out the disclosure covering up the water damage. You had a home inspector come in who didn't notice the water damage. Maybe you paid him to not say something. Like, I feel like it almost makes it worse because my perspective is if again, we're in the same lawsuit, a homeowner can play dumb to not knowing better. And the reason I can say this is because the overwhelming majority of homeowners are dumb and don't know better. And I find defects in their house where they're like, oh my God, and listen, some people are full of shit, but you can kind of see when people are genuinely upset, especially when they give money in the real estate transaction to make up for it.
Right.
Recently found like in a crawl space that nobody's ever gone into, like ridiculous amounts of fire damage that was probably 30 years old.
Right.
People don't know.
Right.
People don't know these things. So my perspective is like, fill out that form to the best of your ability.
Right.
If you're covering something up, you deserve to get sued because especially on Long Island, now I could get on a milk crate about this forever, but I'm a proud homeowner.
Right.
I try my best to put good money and to put good effort into my home. And you know what? Listen, Long Island real estate loves to appreciate. So one day I'm going to sell this house for too much money. I'm going to make too much money on it. But at least I did my best to upkeep it.
Yep.
And the reason, what I'm going to get to is what pisses me off so much is I see so many homeowners right now who do not do anything to take care of their home. They haven't put $1 into it. And even if they did garbage work that my buyers are going to have to fix.
Right.
And they're still going to win on the house. They're still going to appreciate. They're still going to make a ton of money. Yep. So my perspective is, buyers have no options. There's no houses to buy. They're not getting good rates anymore. They're paying $5,000 a month in a mortgage and taxes to live on Long Island just to raise their family. If you feel the need to bury something, to get just another thing on them, honestly, I kind of hope they get sued because I think it's just kind of justice. Like, buyers have it so hard right now. So that, I could filibuster about that forever. Because it's something that really bothers me. Because I think buyers do have it really difficult, and they're crazy enough to say, okay, I'm going to pay a ton of money to live in Long Island and raise my family. I want them to at least know what they're getting into.
Well, but and oftentimes you can avoid that or at least hedge a little bit against that risk by having a good team, having a great home inspector, having a great attorney, having a great agent, so that you see those defects. And my biggest thing is disclose. I let the buyer know everything I can so that they know full and well what they're entering into. It's going to be one of the biggest transactions of their life, so they need to know. Right?
Exactly. And listen, doing a home inspection, one of the biggest things I tell them is like, it's a used home.
Yep.
Let's walk away from this house. The defects I found for you are scary. Let's walk away. I don't care if you buy or you don't buy it. But we're going to go buy another house around the corner. I'm going to come in and do the inspection, and we're going to have the same conversations. Every house is going to have 20 to 30 defects.
Right.
Some of the stuff you're going to have to fix soon. Some of the stuff you're going to live with. My inspection report list is getting longer every year. The problem is I know about it.
It's also a business standpoint too. You got to make sure you protect yourself from any sort of liability,
of course,
right?
of course. But like I'm saying, like even on my own house, like I live here, my defect list is growing. There's a pipe leaking in my crawl space right now. I know about it. You just got to know about it.
Well, you're also a good homeowner. You take care of your home. You put love, care. You raise your family in your home. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And the market is the market. I mean, Eskimos can sell ice to Eskimos.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
100%.
Right? So it's just one of those things.
And on Long Island, there's always somebody else with money ready to buy your house, especially like in a strong neighborhood. I see it over here. We're in ice slip, and people I know, even my friends, would probably pay $30,000 to $40,000 more than you would to buy a house over here to move back into their old neighborhood. Where maybe if you go to Bayshore or East Islip, they wouldn't pay that much to go to Bayshore or East Islip, but a Bayshore or East Islip kid would. So that's what's like kind of keeping these markets so strong.
It's an emotional, it becomes emotional at that point.
Waiving home inspections, which is silly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'd get 2 home inspections. I would hire 2 competitors, make them do 2 home inspections, because I'm thinking about 7,000 different. If I'm buying a finished house that I assumed is in great shape, I'm thinking about so many other things. I'm not thinking. I obviously would walk through it, but I'm not kidding. If I was buying a house right now, I'd let somebody else do a home inspection. Why not?
Yeah.
Keeps the business moving.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's one more job for somebody to do.
Yep.
And also too, the value I think a home inspector brings is just that impartial, unbiased opinion. I go in the house, like I said, I don't care if you buy it or you don't buy it. I'm going to give you the facts about it. I'm going to tell you what I think the house is telling me, what I see the house is, and I don't care. I even honestly have gotten to the point, I look at the listings because I like to get the listing agent's info. I put them in my CRM. I don't look at the prices. I can't get involved in that because we have a job to do. And I build quick trust with the clients, and they love to ask the question like, what do you think about these numbers? And I was like, it all sounds messed up to me because I haven't looked at the real estate market numbers since 2016. I bought my house. I thought I overpaid for my house, and now it's doubled in price. So it's like, I can't give you any good advice. I was like, but I'll tell you how old the boiler is. Like that. Let's go back to talking about the house.
Yep.
You talk with the pros about the.
And that's all we get. I get that question too. Like, what do you think the value is gonna be? I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope it's triple what you pay for. I just don't know.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Yeah.
And as an attorney, I'll never give you a guarantee. By the way, and if there's ever an attorney that gives you a guarantee, please.
Guarantee on like if it's
just
a good
anything
deal.
on the deal, like, oh, we're guaranteed to get this, we're guaranteed to get that.
Yeah.
I will say one thing about the property closing disclosure statements too, is that there obviously are exemptions to the rule. So what we were talking about before, like an administrator coming in who got appointed, say he's never lived in the property, never been a part of the property.
Yeah, how would he know?
They're not going to be required.
Okay, all right, that's interesting.
There's going to be several of those exemptions. That was just one that we brought up and we talked about.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's an interesting game, man. Real estate law, it's crazy. I said I still work alongside a lot of times, termite reports. I'll get questions asked, but I won't lie. I miss that buyer's market. I loved going into a house and finding defects and the lawyer calling me. And like I said, it actually sharpened my report writing skills. We were getting buyers money, so I don't know when it'll swing back to that, but at some point it will.
And that's the other thing too is like, oftentimes with a great team, good, home inspector, good agent, good attorney, it's not guaranteed, but more often than not, you'll see savings of some sort in some way, shape, or form, be it credits, concessions, repairs.
Absolutely,
you name it. Contractually, just making sure things are.
I've gotten,
timeline.
And I love that text. Like I said, it used to happen a lot more, but every now and then where it's like we got 10 grand off. I did one for this mansion where I found tons of floor damage, floor system damage. It was absurd. The guy it was a 7-figure house. He got $100,000 off. Yeah. Like, wow, man, I think I charged him $600 because it was a fancy house. I was like, oh, it paid for itself, man. Like, that's a pretty good investment, right?
Yeah, for sure.
$600 on $100,000.
And that obviously explains it right there, right? And you do that every day, so
try.
And you also, like I said, with that construction background, you're also kind of giving an indication as to, hey, this might go. Generally, this is the ballpark. Often a good agent, home inspector, attorney can kind of give you as a personal opinion, like, these are generally what you're going to see in terms of cost to fix X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. Yeah. It's not guaranteed, like I mentioned, but it's just an idea so that they know. Yeah,
I give them rule of thumb. I tell them you can get quotes for 20%, 30% higher, 20%, 30% less. You always get multiple quotes, but listen, I've been a part of so many boiler installs where I know how much a boiler install is going to go, and I'll tell them which one it is too. So it's like from the experience I'm able to guide them, but I try not to get too involved with the numbers where I'm like, you still got to shop it and be a pessimist. If I tell you 10, think 15.
Budget
because
more, right?
you got it. You just got it. Because with home ownership, it just goes out the window. Money just keeps flying.
And I know you wanted to mention this at one point, but like the property closing disclosure statement as well, and even before that with the credits, it doesn't come with new construction. I think you mentioned new construction at one point. Because you get those warranties, right? We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, construction. So when you buy new construction, you're talking about warranties. Who is getting the warranty? Like, who is warranting it?
The person who's purchasing, and then within the warranty period after when the warranty starts, anyone thereafter up until the warranty period. So 1 year, 2 year, and 6 year warranty.
It's warranted from the builder, the contractor on record.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. And that's general business law, chapter 777, whatever it is. It's an implied warranty, right? And you can't waive it. So it's a good warranty to have with new construction. And the theory is there, right? There shouldn't be any known defects with new construction. So if the person is licensed, they do the right thing. They get everything permitted, signed off from the municipality, CO'd, you name it. Everything should be in working order.
And now, so new is such a vague term because I see people talk about new all the time, but being on doing new construction work and actually being a part of the code process, new means something. A flip house that was gut renovated, that maybe even if they pulled permits for, that's not new. New is when the title on the architect's form says new residence. That's what we're talking about, where nobody's inhabited it, it's a builder building it, there's a contractor on record. That's new construction. So I don't want people to get confused. They're buying a new flip when it's really just, Home Depot trim and some paint.
Right.
There's no warranty on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nobody to warranty it because there's probably not even a licensed contractor doing the work. So that we're talking straight up brand new construction.
Foundation, right? Girders, beams, all this stuff, building the house.
Yeah, and if a buyer thinks they're buying new construction and they're under this impression, that's something we can find out right away because you could just ask them, be like, hey, provide the paperwork that, show me the plans, show me the contractor license. Yeah, that's something that they would find out immediately.
Yeah, and oftentimes too, like seller attorneys, for example, who represent investors, they'll even disclose in the contracts. They'll just make sure it's known, like, hey, this is not new construction.
Gotcha.
So the warranty.
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of discussed ahead of time. Yep. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. The new construction warranty it saves a lot of people.
It's great. I mean, so sometimes the seller's attorneys won't provide the warranty itself. I always get the warranty. We're signing off on it. You're getting an original, seller's getting an original, and then you get that 1 year, 2 year, and 6 year period. Every warranty period has different things that it's covering. Yeah. And then obviously if you sell and you're still within that period, the next owner of record would come in and they'd still get part of that warranty.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, interesting thing, man. Yeah. All right, I think we're getting close. We can go on all day. Yeah, there's so many different things, but why don't you take a second, tell the good people where they can find you.
Yep.
And we'll get out of here.
So our main office is in Garden City. We're at 585 Stewart Ave, Suite 650, Garden City, New York.
Snider Law on Instagram?
Snider Law PLLC on Instagram. Our office number is 516-928-7605. We have a team of 5 to 7 people.
Nice, man. You're growing, man.
We're growing. We're making it work.
It's been a few years that we've been working together, and I see you growing every year, man. That's awesome. Really hyped for you.
Thanks
Family's growing, the business is growing. So happy for you, man. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. Appreciate you, John.
Thank you.
Any real estate attorney questions, reach out to my man, John. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay knowledgeable.